Hello there, welcome back to 10-2, and we're going to start talking about adding real numbers together here. And it starts with this page. I believe it's page 5 in your notes, so if you would get there if you're not there right now. It says two numbers whose sum are 0, in other words you add them together, those are called opposites. Or you could also call those additive inverses of each other. That's kind of the math word that you might run across in your math future. Opposite is often confused with absolute value. Okay, so if I gave you the number 34 and I asked you for its opposite, you would tell me negative 34. Okay, if I asked you for the opposite of negative 8, you'd say positive 8. Because when you add those two numbers together, you get 0. Well, 0 itself doesn't really have an opposite. You could say 0 plus 0 is 0, but since it's the same number, not really, doesn't really count there as far as an opposite goes. The opposite of that number, that decimal, would be 3.75. So you kind of get the picture here. If you have a variable and I asked you for the opposite, you would just change the sign on it. It's positive x, so you take the opposite of x. And here you have a negative x, so you would make that positive x, whatever value that would be there. So again, often confused with absolute values there. So on the next slide here, well, if we talk about the opposite of opposites, that means like, let's say you had that, like negative 3, that's like the opposite of 3. The opposite of negative 3, which would be positive 3. Okay, so anytime you add, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, there's another example. Negative 4 would actually be positive 4, or the opposite of x would make positive x right there. So as I was about to say, adding opposites together always makes 0. Two negatives and two positives would make 0. So it doesn't matter what the numbers are. And that's what the variables are to show here. It does not matter what number it is. If you add the opposite to itself, you get 0 as an answer. Okay, hopefully easy enough for you. Now, in all the years that I've been teaching pre-algebra and algebra, this issue right here, subtraction, has probably created more problems and errors and mistakes of any one thing. It's understanding how to subtract when you deal with negative numbers, because it looks weird. Some kind of strange things happen. So this is important for us to know, that the real definition of subtraction is if you take some number minus another number, that's the same thing as taking that original number and adding the opposite of whatever this number was. Okay. In other words, here's an example that is just a nice simple one. If I said 7 minus 2, which I know is 5, well, I can say that that's the same thing as if I have 7. Now, I'm going to change that sign to plus, and I'm going to change the sign, it's minus positive 2, so I'm going to make it plus negative 2. That is also 5. So these are the same thing, and that's always true. If you add the opposite value, you get the same answer. So in other words, a minus b is equal to a plus the opposite of b. Now, this is exceptionally valuable for us when we start subtracting negative numbers, because it's really, really easy to make mistakes mentally on what might look like a really simple question. What's really simple is messing it up and making an error, as you might see on the next page here if you haven't done this before. Take a look at number 1. Oftentimes in my face-to-face class, I'll quickly say, what does that look like? What does the answer look like? And usually I get answers of 4 and negative 4, negative 2 minus 6. But really what you're doing here is you're at negative 2, okay, and you're decreasing negative 2 by 6. So it's actually going this way, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to here. It actually ends up there, negative 8. Now, here's the way you should do it. You take negative 2. Now remember this, a minus b equals a plus negative b from the previous slide. So that means whatever that number is, I'm going to keep the same. I'm going to keep -2, -2. But we change the subtraction sign to plus, and then we take the opposite of that. Now that's minus +6, so we're going to add -6. And there you can see it, -2 plus -6 is equal to -8. And that's the right answer. And down here I tried to show it to you. All right, take a look at number 2. Number 2 is actually a little easier, I think, than the last one, but it's 3 take away 4. So if we change that to plus -4, we can see that the answer is really -1. Okay, 3 minus 4. You're at 3, you take away 4. You go to the left 4, you end up, in that case, at -1. Here's a really interesting one. Number 3, 6 minus -5. Again, oftentimes in that face-to-face class, I say, well, what does that look like? And I often get answers of 1 or -1. But watch what happens here. We want to keep this. We want to change this to plus, and we want to change that to its other sign, which was negative, now it's plus. 6 minus -5 is the same thing as 6 plus 5, which is 11. Right there. Okay? You can think of it like this. If you're at 6, if I were to take away 5, I would go to the left. But instead of taking away +5, you're going to take away -5, which actually sends your line that way up to 11. All right, the easiest way to deal with it is to understand how this works, how you can change subtraction to addition. You will benefit yourself to learn that, practice it, and do it. Particularly in algebra, you'll find a lot of mistakes will be saved by doing that. Let's look at how we would deal with number 4 then. I have -4. Okay, -4 is not going to change, okay, because it's not the thing that's being subtracted. It's being subtracted from. Now this is -2, so I'm going to go boom, boom. 2 marks on my paper. Change that to plus, change that to minus. Okay, let's go on. +3. You don't want to change the addition sign, so you keep that plus. Boom, boom. Change that to plus negative. Now, you can add these numbers up, and you're less likely to make an arithmetic error by trying to subtract something quickly incorrectly here. So if I add these up, you got -4, -2, and -5. You can double check me, but if you add all those together, I believe it comes out to be -8. Add those together. Okay, you got, here's -6 right there. There's, add 3 to that would make it -3. -3 plus -5 is your -8 right there. How about this last one, number 5 on this page? -3 minus -4 minus 2 plus 6 minus 8. Okay, -3 does not change. It's the first thing. But we're taking away -4, which is the same thing as adding +4. Minus +2 is the same thing as adding -2. Keep addition, addition. Don't change that addition sign, but I would like you to change that to plus negative. Now that you're adding everything, you can match these up. This is a really interesting one, by the way. -8 plus -2, that's -10. And here you got 4 plus 6 is +10. So basically, these 4 things basically come out to be 0. You got -10 plus -10 plus +10 is 0. So you're left with -3 is the answer there. You can double check me on your calculator, but I'm pretty sure that that's what that problem will work out to be for you. So that is going to finish this video, and then I'm going to start the next one as we talk about multiplication and wrap it up with division for you. So we will talk to you in a moment.